Shot Hole Canyon here. If you look to the sides and you look at the limestones below the cliffs, you see the whitish yellow sandy looking stuff at the bottom. That's the Mandu calcarenite. Now that's a chalky marley type of limestone. It's not really cavern bearing because it doesn't have a great deal of structural strength. If you look closely at it, you'll see lots of microfossils which are quite apparent in the rock itself, and if you rub your fingers on it, you'll notice it comes away under your fingertips quite easily. So you just touch it and it's a sandy type of limestone. Not very pure limestone compared to the upper limestones. When you look up to the top of the cliffs and you see the cliff edges there with undercutting, that's sort of where the Tolki limestone starts, and it's grading into the Mandu calcarenite beneath. So you've got this interface where you've got a sandy, chalky limestone transferring into a hard crystalline limestone. The cliffs occur there because weathering forms a sort of case hardening on the Tolki limestone, so it gets quite resistant to weathering, and the softer limestones underneath blow out. Some of those caves that are underneath the harder limestones could be what we call flank margin caves, formed when the gorges were inundated by higher sea levels and the ground was actually lower during interglacial and glacial periods. Most of the caves occur in that upper limestone you see up there, so they occur up to a depth between 50 to 100 metres deep, and that's the depth of the Tolki limestone. Beyond that point, caves tend not to form because, as I said before, the Mandu calcarenite is not really cavern forming. It fills in and collapses quite easily, and also seems to become a bit impervious to water, as like clays it fills up with water, and water tends to run over the surface of it between the limestones, and it tends to dissolve away the crystalline Tolki limestone above into chambers and caves where the water flows through and off the softer limestone beneath. We're here up on Charles Knife Road, so we're up on top of the range, which has a maximum height of about 314 metres. When you're standing on the edge of the gorge looking down in here, you're standing on top of Tolki limestone. Now, once upon a time, in years past, before other limestones eroded away, you would have been standing on top of a hard white crystalline limestone called Triella limestone, but unfortunately most of that is now dissolved, eroded away, and we've got a layer of limestone, Tolki limestone, about 50 to 100 metres thick. And in this limestone is where most of our caves occur. In this area that we're looking across here over the ranges, there are hundreds of recorded caves and probably many more caves we haven't discovered yet. And also there will be lots of caves in the limestone that have no natural entrances as well. As we look down in the gorge, you can see the eroded edges there sort of tapering away to the bottom, to the creek at the bottom. And most of that's Mandu calcarenite, which is a soft chalky limestone. And it doesn't really have caves in it, but you do see a lot of caves, rock shelter type features underneath the cliffs. And you can also see where the cliffs eventually collapsed away into the gorge, and you see the big boulders at the bottom. Some of those caves under there are formed at different times, usually between glacial and interglacial periods when sea levels were higher and the landforms were lower before the range was elevated so far. And these caves formed in a different way to the fluvial caves we see on top of the range. So when we look at those holes on top of the range, they've usually been formed by flowing water going down holes in the limestone and cracks and enlarging them into caves. And when we look at those caves in the sides of the gorges, they're generally flank margin caves, and they're usually formed at a point where the fresh water mixes with the seawater when the sea level is that high. And they're usually inside the limestone with no natural entrances until, as you see, the cliff face retreat exposes them and we can look into them from here. And occasionally when you look in those caves you can see decorations which would form when the caves were closed, because cave decorations generally don't form very well in the open air, especially in a dry climate like we've experienced now for the last 180,000 plus years.